Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us for the first MOA Mentoring webinar of 2018 featuring University of Illinois Springfield Director of Athletics, Jim Sarra. Today, we're extremely lucky to have an administrator with us whose leadership experience spans 25 years across 8 NCAA institutions with expertise in strategic planning and sport management, fundraising, budget and business operations, student-athlete welfare, external relations, and master facility planning. During his time at the University of Springfield, Jim has rebranded the athletics program, developing a facility master plan as well as initiating a 5-year strategic plan. In addition, he has also increased fundraising by 40% and corporate sponsorships by 35%. Jim deeply believes in community outreach, not only for his athletic department, but the support for the MOA membership. Please welcome me in thanking Jim Sarra today as our guest speaker for this year's webinar.
Thank you, Marcus. I appreciate it. I appreciate the kind words. Really looking forward to doing this today. An opportunity to give back to all the people whose shoulders I was able to step on. So as we move forward, in front of you should have the presentation overview. Just want to do a little bit of a personal introduction, talk about the journey to the chair, my philosophy on personal and professional growth, seeking and applying to jobs, mentors and mentees, which really this is what this is about. Networking, talk a little bit about crisis situations, managing and supervising staff, work-life balance, if there's really such a thing, and pitfalls. Next slide, please. Personal introduction, next slide. My education, I have a bachelor's in elementary education and a master's in education from St. Bonaventure University. I also have a second master's in sport management from Western Illinois University. I'm currently working on my doctorate in education through Grand Canyon University online in organizational leadership. Next slide, please. As you can see from a number of places I've been, my professional experiences have all been at the Division I level and range from those with non-football, so basketball-only institutions, all the way to Power 5 schools, which back in the day would have just been BCS institutions, to also University of Texas San Antonio, where I was for almost 11 years, where we actually started a football program. Next slide. Family, Heather is my wife, and I have a son, James III, who we call JT, who is currently 13, and our daughter Jordan, who is 12. From my personal interests, I like when I can, I like to spend time with family. I've coached them in different youth sports from soccer to, other things. I do like to cook. I do like to grill, and I also like to barbecue and smoke things. I love to travel when I can. Anything outdoor, and then reading, which I will talk a little bit about later. So next slide, please. The journey. So my administrative path is a little different. I started out in academic services and then moved into compliance and then the external. The interesting piece is when I got into academic services and then eventually compliance, I was pretty happy. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I didn't even think twice about becoming an athletic director. And it wasn't until the year 2000, I was at Washington State University, or it was 2001, I think. And I can remember this very vividly. I was having breakfast with a consultant who was the former WAC commissioner, Joe Kearney. And Joe and I were talking, and can't remember how the actual conversation turned, but he said to me that the AD at the time, which was Jim Sturk, who's currently at Missouri, said he thought I would be a good AD at some point. And so it really got me to think about it. And after that day, I think that was a Saturday morning, and I think by Monday, I turned my attention and focused toward becoming an athletic director. Wasn't sure how to go about doing that, but I utilized my monthly meetings with Jim, as well as mentors that I had on figuring out how to get to the chair. So I ended up joining NACDA. I attended the Division I AD Institute a number of times, which is now Lead One. I advanced my career by moving 8 different times to new and better jobs with the goal of becoming an athletic director. I wish I had moved out of compliance a bit sooner. And the one thing I can tell you is don't get yourself pigeonholed, especially if you're really good at compliance, you're really good at academic services. Your ADs want to pigeonhole you in there because they don't want to have to replace you. But your skill set is very transferable to a number of other positions. Thus, how I ended up getting moved into the external area when I got to UTSA. Your transferable skills are very conducive to continuing your growth into a better job opportunities. It was at UTSA when I did move into the external operations area, oversaw that for about 3 or 4 or 5 years, moved into the deputy AD role there, and then had my hands on a number of other different units within the athletics department. Next slide. So from a professional and personal growth standpoint, you need to get involved. NACDA, NCAA, MOAS, on campus as well. You want to be able to, continue to build on what you're doing. And so, my feeling is, and I have read and read some more. If you're not learning, you're drying up on the vine, and or you're dying, and that's how I feel. And so I'm always reading. Now, my leisure reading has kind of taken a back seat over the last few years because I've done a lot of reading in leadership and articles toward my dissertation. But I would tell you, if you're not doing so, then you need to start reading. Reading in different areas, not necessarily just one specific area, but look to your mentors to recommend different books. And so the people that I have as mentors, typical question I ask at the end is, what are you reading right now? And that's something you want to do because you can also utilize that in future phone calls or meetings with your mentors. It's network. You got to be networked. And I don't mean network just from a social media standpoint, not through LinkedIn, Twitter, all these different things. You have got to get networked. And so who's in your network? Who's in it? Who are the people that are in your network? Have a written plan with goals. Look at it monthly and adjust as needed, and share those goals with your mentors. Share that written plan with people. Let other people see it. Don't be so guarded or concerned, because if people don't know what your goals are, they can't help you. Next slide. When you're looking for an opportunity, everybody's looking. I had a great piece of advice from somebody that was at the NCAA and has now left. And they said to me, are you running from a job or are you running to a job? And I thought that was great. So I do utilize that now. I think sometimes we run from somewhere thinking the other job is going to be better, and that's not necessarily the truth. So think of that question when you're looking to move on and for a different opportunity. I was also told a long time ago that the grass isn't always greener on the other side, and there is some truth to that. Be strategic. When you're looking to apply for jobs, you've got to really be strategic in the job hunt. Don't dilute your name or yourself. People do know if you're applying for multiple opportunities. And today, nothing's a secret. Everything seems to get out in some fashion, whether it's on the different websites that are out there, but everybody seems to know what's going on. Always have a professional credential packet ready. It's got to be pristine. I'm working with a couple young people on our staff, and I looked at one of the cover letters, and I didn't even make it past the date because they shortened the month. And I was like, if you can't write out the month, I guess you're kind of lazy in my mind. But make sure every I's dotted, every T's crossed, every period, everything is written absolutely perfect when you go to look for a job. So next slide, please. Mentors and mentees, as I said a little bit ago, those are really, really important. And you've got to really, it's part of the networking process, but find the right mentors. A mentor is not somebody that you just met. And mentors are precious. And I've never gotten a job without their help. So, you've got to really utilize them, be able to utilize them, but you also got to understand, one, they are precious people and their time is very precious. Two, you've got to constantly have good communication with them, and set some boundaries with them. I always ask, how do you want to communicate? Is it text? Is it email? Is it phone call? If it's a phone call and it's a monthly phone call, do you want me to communicate with you beforehand with some questions that things we can talk about? Everybody's different. Some are just, hey, call whenever. They'll answer if they can, or they'll get back to you. Some are like, hey, text me a few days in advance, give me a week's notice. So everybody's different. And here's another part that I think we lose sight of as a mentee. You need to give them as much as you get. And so I've always tried to give them an opportunity. Is there a way I can help them? You have experiences that you can share with different people, even if they're an athletic director. Hey, I saw you were going through this. Is there anything I can help with? And, because I have a background in compliance, sometimes I can talk compliance with athletic directors or, other compliance people that may be mentors or colleagues of mine. So don't short yourself on what your experiences are. You can also help them as well. So mentors, mentees, again, precious, really got to work at that. Next slide, please. Networking, build a network. I can't, stress enough how important it is. It's personal. It's not a social media thing. It is, getting face to face. It's calls. It's, if you go to NACDA or you go to MOA events or you go to whatever professional development, I'm not sure what I want to say, but whenever you have an opportunity to be around them, get face to face with them, have a coffee with them, have lunch with them, get in front of them. You make the connection, constantly make a connection with them. What I don't like is somebody comes up and hands me a card and runs off and then calls me 6 months later. I want people that are willing to, make and invest their time in me if I'm going to invest my time in you. Again, you need to be strategic about it. Look to people that are really willing to assist you, but also be authentic. There's nothing worse than somebody that's not authentic with me, that's just trying to utilize me for something. And they pick that up pretty quickly, and they know who you are and what you're like, and they can be extremely helpful to you. So next one. Managing and supervising staff, I've done it for a long time. And when you become an athletic director, it changes everything. You're in that top seat alone, and you're no longer part of the gang or part of the staff. But what I've realized is I have to be a good role model for the staff. I have to bring the energy every day, and whether you're an assistant AD, associate AD, senior associate, or you're the AD, I think it's important that you bring that energy every day, that you work with them, and that you're a good role model to them. The other thing is that you need to be true to your core values. So what are those? And make sure that you stick to them. Set firm boundaries. Sometimes we like to hang out with our people that we work with and do things, but set some firm boundaries, but also empower your staff to do their jobs and learn and grow. If you don't do that, then they're not growing. And let's go back to what I said earlier. If you're not growing, you're dying or shriveling up on the vine. I think you got to reward good work when you can. And I like to, whether it's publicly praise them or, it could be simply just a note to them, hey, this was great. But anytime I get a chance to reward somebody or give immediate feedback to them, I do. And even from an immediate feedback standpoint, it may be some things they need to improve on. I hired a new deputy AD about a year ago, and one thing I've learned from him and his father was a former military, we do after-action reviews on everything we do. And so that provides immediate feedback on anything we do, any kind of event that we do. We do an after-action review, and that's been extremely helpful. And I think it's the same thing with managing your staff. It's just provide feedback as immediate as you can and don't let it sit. The other thing is cross-train. If you have the ability where you oversee a couple different units that maybe work hand in hand, just for example, at one point I oversaw academics and compliance at UTSA, and so I wanted to make sure that some people had a little bit of knowledge in the compliance area and vice versa, compliance to academics. That way, when they're going to look for a new opportunity, they can say they've done both. And same thing in the external area. If you're doing development, can you sell sponsorships? If you sell sponsorships, can you do development? Can you market? Can you sell tickets? I think that makes people a little more valuable. Next. Crisis situations. You constantly have them. If you haven't had one, you're going to have one. The first thing we did here, because they didn't have anything, was develop a crisis communication plan. We involved our staff internally as well as looked outside our department and brought the university in developing that plan. And the first thing we did was create how we are going to handle it from the perspective of public relations. And so everything comes up to me, and then I contact our chancellor, who then will work through the PR person for the university. The other thing we did is create a phone tree internally and who's your first call to. And so the other thing we've done in any crisis situation is make sure that our student athletes know who they are to contact if there's a situation, which more than likely will be their head coach. If they need to get their head coach, it's their sports supervisor. And I utilize 2 other staff members to supervise sports beside myself. And so they know that they can contact them at any time if there is a crisis situation. But what I would do is go back, see if your department has one. If they do, know how to utilize it and how it works. If not, it's something that you probably need to think to do, especially with what's going on in the world today. Next. Hazards. There's probably a lot more than these after 20 years, but at the same time, it's, these were a few things that just jumped out at me. It's network, communicate with your network, work your network, communicate. Can't say that enough. It's one of those things where if you continue to build your network and you do it the right way, it is going to help you tremendously. Not just advancing your position, but helping in your job. And so if you don't think that I'm continuing using my network in this position, you're crazy, because I don't know everything. The one thing I always utilize saying is the sum of all of us is greater than the one of us. And so I always look to different people. Hey, how have you handled this situation? What are you doing? So I'm constantly communicating with the people in my network. Second thing, just from sitting in the athletic director position within the department, try to avoid office gossip at all times. I think it lacks professional image and can ruin your professional image. And you don't want to get that reputation that you're the person that's gossiping all the time. And, I have a very, very young staff here, and I think sometimes they get caught up in the gossip, and I've had to constantly address that, don't get caught up in it. Don't be starting it, because that's something that's going to hurt you. Lastly, from a hazard standpoint, don't try to be somebody you're not. Be the best you. Be the best you can be. Do the best you can at your current job every day, and you'll get rewarded. And that's how I operated. Is if I can be the best compliance person or the best academic service person, then I was going to get rewarded. So, next slide, please. Work-life balance, as I said earlier, not sure that there really is one. I will tell you, for those that aren't Division II people, that might be D2 or D3, or I'm sorry, D1 or D3, having worked at Division I, I never really felt like I had a work-life balance. I feel like I have more of a work-life balance at Division II. I've heard this for years, and I firmly believe it. Working intercollegiate athletics is a lifestyle. There's no true balance. What it really comes down to is prioritization of your own time. How are you going to prioritize it? I try to blend my family into as many events as I can. Now that they're the ages they are, they're doing a million different things and they're going in different directions. I'm blessed to have a wife who, and Heather, who is willing to take them to all kinds of different practices and things, but also makes an effort to get to different events here. The other thing is find time for your own health. I work out every day, whether it's first thing in the morning, lunchtime, or after work. I really like to work out at lunchtime, but as I have found in the last 20 plus months as an AD, it's a lot harder because you have a lot of lunches and different things. But I do find a time to work out every day, at least 5 to 6 days a week. I do take one day. So next slide, please. Questions? Marcus, I don't know if you had questions already for me.
We do. Jim, thank you so much for the presentation and the information that you provided. Believe that it was very informative, that participants and MOA members could take with them as they transition and move through their career. We do have questions that I'll ask, provided by the participants, and I'll ask them in no particular order. So first question, can you provide suggestions on how I can go about building my personal brand?
Oh, that's interesting. The one thing I probably didn't talk about is, letting people know what you want to accomplish. So whether it's your mentors or people in your network, even your own, if you're not an athletic director, letting your athletic director know what you want to accomplish. That's part of your brand building, is to let people know what your goals are. I talked a little bit about sharing your goals, but if you don't let people know what you want to accomplish, then it's hard for them to help you. The biggest thing for building the brand to me is, don't do anything. What's the old saying? Don't do anything that would embarrass your mom or your dad. That's really all I can think of. I look at, when I think of myself, I tried to just do some of the things I talked about. Be the best I could be, let people know what I wanted to accomplish, get out and get involved. If you're part of NACDA and whatever group you're part of, try to get on the board or try to present. That's how you really build your brand, to get people to know who you are, get to know the different people who might be able to help you. And that's probably the best advice I can give. I'm sure there's other people on this call that could probably give better advice than I can, but that's the best I can give you right now.
Thank you. What are some daily demands of being an athletic director?
The daily demand is really time. And I talked about prioritizing my time, and I'm a freak about, I'm almost OCD-ish when it comes to like priorities. But you learn very quickly that your time is really not yours. It's everybody around you. And so you're constantly being pulled in a number of different directions. That's one thing. The other is, especially at this level, is figuring out how to generate resources or revenue to provide resources to our people. And that might be across the board, because everybody's trying to figure out how to generate revenue and get more for their staff. And that's probably another thing. Those are probably the two biggest things. But as you kind of alluded to earlier, Marcus, the other big thing for me here was brand recognition for UIS and then UIS athletics, because in the city of Springfield, people still weren't sure who we are, and they still aren't today. But we're a part of the University of Illinois system. We have an economic impact in the city of over $175 million, but people don't understand that or know that. And so when I've been out talking to different groups or individuals, I always talk about the return on investment to the Springfield community, that, either students are spending money in this community, or B, people are going to possibly employ them at some point. And so if they become interested in us, then that's their return on investment if they can help us. But really, the brand, building the brand and getting people to realize it's crazy here in Springfield. There's nothing really that far. It maybe takes a 15 to 20 minute drive to go anywhere, but people think we are like on the other side, like we're trying to get through Chicago traffic on a daily basis to get somewhere. But it's incredible. And once they get out here, they think, wow, what a great place, and this is right in our own backyard. So those are probably the three biggest things that I deal with on a daily basis.
You mentioned earlier during your presentation the importance of growing and reading. Are there specific books that you suggest?
Yes. The one book, Jason Selk put out Organize Tomorrow Today. He's got a new one out. Really like that one, the Organize Tomorrow Today. Lincoln, believe it or not, even though I'm in Illinois, I'm going to say this, but Lincoln on Leadership is one of my favorite books, but I also think President Lincoln was one of the greatest presidents ever. And, the fact that his museum is here is pretty cool as well. But, if anybody's really interested, they can contact me and I can share a number of books and that I've read over the years here. It's off the top of my head. I always mess this up. Carol Dweck's book, Mindset's a really good book, even though it's not necessarily on leadership, but it talks about mindset and when you're dealing with people, whether they're student athletes or people that you work with, on what kind of mindset they have. I think that's a tremendous book. The grit, the stuff on grit is really good. But those are some of the things off the top of my head. But if anybody's really interested, they can contact me.
Can you tell me what your experience was like the first time you had to have a tough conversation, whether it was with a staff member, coach, or administrator? It's a little bit nerve-wracking. I'm one of those people that plays the scenario in my head over and over and over again, so I feel like I'm prepared for it already. But it is nerve-wracking because you're just not sure how that person's going to take it. And what I've learned is, I went through some life-changing things about 5 years ago, and I've become probably a little more direct than I was, and I'm probably maybe too direct at times. So I've had to dial that back a little bit in certain situations. But I feel like if I put it out there and I'm direct with them, that they're going to respect that. But it's also, people are, we're all human and we all take things different ways. And a lot of times, what I have found, especially here, is people aren't aware of what you're telling them. Like there isn't a lot of self-awareness. And so when you're describing the situation to them, they're just completely shocked by it. And so I've had to change then my, how I bring it back around to what I want accomplished. And so I might come at them direct, but they're like, well, I didn't know this, to then, okay, how do we work through it? How do we help you get better? How do we make sure that this isn't going to happen again, depending on what it is? How often do you reevaluate your goals and set new goals? And the second part to this question is, do you have a long-term career goal for yourself?
I look at my goals probably now monthly. And, if there's any athletic directors on here, they'll probably agree with me that time just moves really, really fast. And so before you know it, a month is gone and you're like, oh my God, what happened? And so I try to at least sit down monthly and look at what I'm doing. If I've accomplished something, then I cross it off and I reevaluate and I put something new on there. My long-term goal or career goal, I've done it. I got to the AD chair. I didn't care where it is or where it does or where it was going to be. It's just I wanted to get here. And I love where I'm at. Do I need to be the AD at Notre Dame or a Power 5? No, I really truly don't. Because at the end of the day, why I got into this field was to make an impact on people's lives. And I do that every day here. And I probably do it more so than people at the Power 5 level. and at some institutions, because I get to see the student athletes every day. I get to be around them. I go to practices when I can. I go to just about every game I can. And I don't know that I lost some of that when I became the deputy AD at UTSA. So I feel good. The only other career goal I want to do is finish this doctorate. And, changing jobs in the middle of it has kind of wreaked havoc on me. But, I like to say it's not a matter of when I finish, or it's a matter of when I finish, not if I finish. So it's just going to be a matter of when. And hopefully we'll knock that out here in the next year to 18 months.
And last question, understanding that you did not start your career seeking to be an athletic director, but looking back, are there specific organizations or areas of professional development I should focus on if I want to be an athletic director?
If you are, first, like I said, if you're currently in an athletics department, you need to let your athletic director know that that's what you want to do. Then you need to ask them to help you. And so what I did when I got here is I sat down with every single person in this department and I asked them what their goals were. And so it's interesting. Not everybody wants to be an athletic director. Not everybody, wants to sit in a chair. And those that do, I told them we need to sit down and talk about it. And here's some things, I think you need to do. If you are an internal person, it is extremely hard. Because, like I said earlier, if you're really good at what you do, we don't want to move you. And I have a very good compliance person. If she left me, I'd be a little bummed out about it because she'll be very, very difficult to replace because she also has a ton of institutional knowledge. However, if she wants to be an athletic director, we're going to work toward that. And today she doesn't want to be one. The biggest thing for me, if I could change some things, was get out of the internal side as quickly as possible. Like I said, I believe our skills are transferable. When you're on the internal side, all the functions of an athletics department. You really, truly understand how everything works. You deal with people on a daily basis. So if you needed to fundraise, whether it's comfortable or not, you can do it because you know how to build relationships. You know how to work with that coach that's, difficult. And, there's nothing more difficult than dealing with a coach like that because your donors aren't going to be like that. I think a lot of times we're afraid to ask. And so I heard that when I got here is nobody's ever really been asked for, money or different things. And so, it's just been an opportunity. And that's why we've been able to be successful since I got here is because we put a plan together. We're working the plan and we're asking people to help us. From a professional development standpoint, I wish I had gotten a little more involved earlier, and I'm still not as involved as I'd like to be. I'd get involved in the MOAs. I'd get involved more in NACTA or NACMA or NAT or whatever it is, or NAC. When I first started this a long time ago, there weren't as many of these organizations. So if you're a younger person, this is all get involved and figure out how to get involved. And that will help you more than anything because you're going to build your network, you're going to find mentors, and people are going to know that you're taking initiative to do some things. And that's the one thing I think I've come across in the 20 months I've been here, and even probably the last 5 years, is some younger staff members just aren't driven. I'm dealing with right now with a couple people who, they just seem to sit around and wait for you to tell them what to do instead of go out and do things. And that's really what I'm looking for in people. I want people that are passionate about what they're doing. And if I know that you serve on this board and you do this and you're doing that, then, those are the kind of people I want to hire, at some point.
Jim, on behalf of the MOA Mentoring Program, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us and share your experiences, thoughts, and ideas. We wish you nothing but the best of luck, first moving forward with completing your doctoral degree.
Thank you.
Moving forward in general.
Thank you.
And best of luck to everyone else on the call. Thank you to all the participants that were able to join us. Best of luck as you move through the remainder of your academic term. We look forward to seeing everybody at the June MOA Symposium. Thank you and have a good rest of the day.
Marcus, thank you. And also, Julie, thank you as well for putting this together. And I appreciate everybody that took the time to jump on this today. If I can ever be of assistance, please do not hesitate to reach out to me.
Hey, Jim, can I ask? We got one more last question in through the portal. The question reads, do you know a good way to keep in contact with people when you network with them? Once I have people's contact information, I have no problem sending emails, but not sure how to remain in contact with someone without feeling like I'm bugging them.
That's a great question, and it's amazing because I feel the same way when I do reach out to somebody. And so, if you don't, what you need to do, I do the same thing. I'll reach out to them via email. If I don't hear from them, I may send a second email. I may wait a couple of weeks and then send another email to them. Part of the problem is, and like what I deal with is, I get so much email that it's almost like, ugh. And so you lose certain emails. And, for example, there's one person I think is on here that has done a good job with me. I think Darnell's on here. He has contacted me via email. I'm usually pretty good about getting back, but he's also texted me. And so, if I give you my cell number, I'm okay receiving a text. However, what I've also done is just left a message with them at work that, because a lot of times I'll ask, when I meet them, is it okay to contact you? Or I may ask them on the front end, what's the best way to contact you? If they give you a cell number, then they'll tell you, feel free to call my cell. Or if they just give you a card and say, hey, reach out to me, then it's on you to, figure out the best way. I will pretty much tell you how I want you to contact me. But I will leave a message with their assistant, or I'll, if it's a direct line to them, I'll just leave them a voicemail or whatever. But the best way, eventually at some point you're kind of like, well, they're not getting back to me, and maybe they're not the mentor you wanted. And I've had to do that with a couple people where I thought, oh, this will be a great mentor, and it just didn't work out. But that doesn't mean there aren't other people out there. And so I would, just stay persistent, work it, whether it's through email, text, or, calls, just continue to work it. Like I said, I have figured out how the people I utilize as mentors, how to reach out to them. Typically if they'll tell me, just text me a few days ahead or email my assistant and get on my calendar. So they'll give you a good idea how to get in touch with them, but don't be afraid to ask them. I think they'll be happy to tell you this is the best way to contact me.
Thank you again so much, Jim, and thank you everybody for your participation. Again, we look forward to seeing everybody at the June MOA Symposium. Have a good rest of the day.
Great. Thank you very much.